Hello, my name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, listed number 9 of 43 podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, the Customer Growth Expert, awarded RevTech Strategist 2024. In this episode of Scale Your Sales Podcast, my guest and I have an incredible conversation, and she talks about her instincts was first to guide everyone with a clear plan. This is what we're used to. But she said she works in the AI environment and things move fast. And so you've almost got to slow down in order to speed up, and you're able to speed up by asking great questions. I love what she said. You've got to build for the slope, not the destination. My guest is marketing leader with over 20 years of scaling growth at FlutterFlow, Pantastic, Amplitude, and Okta through IPO. She has excelled at building high performance teams, driving demand, and shaping categories. Advisor to startups across stages, board member to Women in Revenue, and leader at GTM Leader Society, fostering connections and thought leadership among executives. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Michelle Kim.
Thanks, Janice. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I am really excited to talk to you. There's so many things that I want to cover with you on this podcast. You've got so much experience, had an incredible career. But I really want to start talking about sales leadership. So much has changed. Now, today, it's not about having all of the answers. And I know a lot of leaders often fall into this trap because they've got a whole history of marketing and sales, and they want to share their knowledge. It's great for their ego. So can you share a moment in your own leadership journey when you realize the power of asking better questions instead of providing the quick answers?
You know, that's such a good one. And I'm like, gosh, were you reading my mind? Because I actually feel that asking good questions is a superpower. And I think it's actually more important now than ever. I've been around for a while and I've had experience, but what I've seen, and also I'm in like the AI space, like this next 18 months has been, or this last like 6 months, it has been completely different than, the past like 10 years, right? And I feel like that things are very different now. I mean, I think it was always important to ask good questions, but I think that things are different now, right? So the things that maybe were working or that were assumed to working don't necessarily work today. And I think that's really when it's like very important to ask the right questions, right? Like, why aren't things working? Really get underneath that to really question like what we do and like why we do it and what is the outcome that we want? Like, what is the outcome we want? And then kind of think backwards from there.
That's a powerful answer. Just recognizing we're in a different world, and it's the beauty of asking the question to actually assess where you are. That if you're always in kind of answer mode, that's based upon history, isn't it? It's really made me think that's based upon what's happened before. So you can actually, as a leader, never have the answer because it's always based on your previous experience. If the world is racing ahead, I mean, this may be going a bit deep, Michelle,
Yeah.
but yeah, you've just thought, yes, she's absolutely right. It's interesting.
Well, it's because I've been a big believer in this for a while because I think a lot of people, there was this era when people talked about playbooks, like playbook, and I'm going to do this, this, this. And I was like, every organization though is unique in its own, like you might even have like the same buyer, right? That you're going after because you came from a different company, but the way that your product or the way that it does and the geos that it is, the kind of the features that the product has, the differentiation, right? Those things are going to be different. And I think it's really important to kind of ask those questions, understand what the difference is, and then make your decisions from there.
Yeah, that's a powerful example because people have moved into, in certainly in sales, one of the problems is that everyone comes in with their own view of what the sales process. So everyone, even on
Yes.
your same team, is doing it in a different way. So then they designed playbooks. There's a playbook, but you're such a great point. You cannot have a playbook that isn't continuing to
Yes.
ask the buyer questions and have the kind of feedback loops that's constantly iterating and changing that playbook. And by the very word playbook means feels like something is fixed as opposed to something that's constantly iterating.
And that said too, exactly. Like I think that you need a starting point and like having some experience, right? And then experience also gives you pattern recognition, right? And so you maybe have like a solid place to start, but like just being a little bit open, right? Asking the questions and being open to kind of like those things that will change or
Yeah.
can change.
Yeah,
I
yeah. And from a leadership point of view, one thing I talk a lot about is North Star leadership and really leading from your core compass, which is your core values.
Yeah.
And when you're really kind of bedded into who you are and what's important to you and what your values are, it's a lot you're a lot less threatened by not knowing really because you're not because you know yourself and that's all you really need to know and you can be curious enough to ask those open questions, not really knowing what the answers are going to be. And I think that's the thing when you are a leader,
Yeah.
curiosity has got to be your DNA.
I was just going to say, like, when you said that, I'm like, it's just about being curious. And I think that is the key, right? And that is the key, I think, to success in almost any job that you, I mean, hopefully you have some curiosity, right? To be like, okay, I want to get here and like, maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not like, or just having that openness. But I think that like you said, that curiosity and funny, that is something that, you can do interviews when you're talking to people and you can have like all these like check marks of like, oh, 5 years in this, 10 years in this experience in ABM or PPC or whatever you want to be. But I think having that curiosity is something that I personally think is very important and that I look for in people as well. And that comes out, right?
Yeah, yeah. So as a leader yourself, how do you reconcile? You've got pressure from the C-suite. They don't want you to, they fear that open flexibility.
Yes.
But yet, with your team,
Yeah.
you need to be seen to lead. But actually, what's working now is the fluidity that you need to have to change directions, as you say, to try new things. How do you reconcile all of those things as a leader?
It is tricky, and I think it's important to have a plan, right? I mean, you have to start from somewhere. You also have to go into things with like a hypothesis, right? And not everything. Like there are some standard things that you're like, oh, maybe we'll do this. It's just a matter of like how much, right? But I think that you've got to have a baseline. It's like having that curiosity, having that openness doesn't mean it's a free for all. Right? It doesn't mean that you can do things right and kind of willy-nilly and not exactly have like a goal around them, right? It is important to have a plan and having that plan map to goals,
Yeah,
right? But it's kind of the way that you get there, or if things change, right? Having that openness and not that rigidness to be kind of stuck in that thing. Or because I have seen people both on that have come on my team or just in organizations that I've been at that come with this plan and they're like, do, check, 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 check. And then kind of walk away. We're like, wait, and it's like, or if something isn't going the way that they're like, oh, just keep going, right? And it's like, well, wait, like I don't, that this might not work because X, Y, Z. And so you do have to have that openness. So I think it's like having the foundation of something that is like in terms of like direction, strategy, having a plan, right, that maps up to wherever you need to be, but having some openness, right, I think within that.
yeah, Yeah, I love that, because the landscape has changed. You mentioned this previously, and today's buyer's landscape is constantly changing, and you what you're mapping is what those changes will and how that impacts on the way that you're marketing and selling to your customer. So land that in how you've applied that at FlutterFlow.
Um, wow, like I said, like now I'm in an AI native space where things are changing almost daily, right? But I think at the core, right, what marketing and what sales is about understanding the customer. So staying kind of really close to your customer, right, your ICP, who they are, what their needs are, how the landscape is changing around them. Because I think fundamentally, right, that is what marketing and sales is about. So I think that's like one thing is staying really close because right, things are changing obviously for them too. And just having like I said, deep understanding of their perspective, the things that are going around them, and then the marketplace, I think is going to be key to success. And I would say like the second thing is when we talk about growth and we talk about some of these things, one of the things I've been talking about too is because, sometimes you're not quite sure what's going to happen, t tomorrow or next week is really also kind of building. And I think this kind of talks to a little bit about the flexibility, the curiosity, asking the questions. We have a goal, we're getting to that goal, but we also want to build for the slope, not necessarily the end point, right? I mean, you want to get to the end, you want to get to that point, but I don't know if you've ever heard that term. It's kind of like building for the slope,
Mhm.
right? Building for that, and that is, I think, an idea that like has that flexibility it kind of buried into that, like integrated into that.
Yeah, and it's such a great phrase, building for the slope. Um, and the challenge that you will have. I'm interested in, you said in some notes that there's a for buyer. We were talking about the buyers, buyer centricity. The focus on buyer centricity is the faster deal velocity, for velocity, and stronger conversion. So help me to understand how that happens when the focus is buyer centricity.
Sorry, so when you talk about like in terms of like the conversion or the just kind of better understanding, I think the customer where they're like the buyer, also where their needs are, I think is what you're saying, where they are
Yeah.
in the buying cycle. And
Yes.
also like I think this is just another thing that has happened with, I mean, it was getting to this point before I would say like your LLMs, your chat GPTs of the world, right? But even more so now, like buyers were doing more research in general, right, about you before you even started that conversation with them. Now, with some of these like research tools, like they are coming in with fully formed opinions and actually know quite a bit about your organization and you and like where you fit into the larger scheme of things because that information is so easy to get. I feel like sometimes actually like that first call with a buyer is sometimes what would have been like a third call, at some other time, right? Like at a previous point in time, right? Where you'd have to have like a couple calls, like getting to, and actually as the seller, as us, like, or as, right, we can find out a lot more about like that organization as well, right? It really goes both ways. And so I think really recognizing that and then having kind of being prepared for that, I think is one thing that's really important. And then I would say, at different companies, it's different motions and different things, right? So that's maybe from a more sales-led, we also have a very product-led motion, right, at FlutterFlow. So really understanding kind of like how we can leverage that to move deals, I guess, and faster through the pipeline.
So how for you, because the customers are at different stages, how are you able to measure what stage your customers are at, so that you're actually hitting them where they're at. You're giving them the right information when they need it. How are you able to assess that?
That's a great question. I think in terms of, there is kind of this layer of we have seen just people are coming in like just more knowledgeable, right? When they're coming to us. So is also how we connect, right? Obviously, if it's more of something that is more inbound, right? They will have had a little bit more information about us. If it's something outbound, right? We know that conversation is going to look a little bit differently when we have that. But I do think it is important, right, to be like kind of prepared for like the different, like have marketing materials, right, for the different stages, and like to really understand like where that buyer, like I said, is in their process, right? Because sometimes, yeah, they come in and you meet with them, particularly if they're inbound, like they've done research or, and you're kind of going in at what would feel like some places like a third meeting.
Yeah, yeah. So you've also, read a lot of your material and talked about how you can engage buyers and make the purchase process frictionless, easier for them to navigate. And part of that is the brand building trust, and part of that is the demand to create lower friction. So how does that kind of framework
Yeah.
work? How do you make that happen where you've got, brand building trust and demand that's lowering the friction to make it easier? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I come so with marketing people, we say like we all come from somewhere, right? Like you kind of spend your earlier years in like a specific thing. Some of it is like demand, some of it is product marketing, some of it is more of like a comms, right? So I spent like my formative years in marketing in the demand space, right? So very like numbers driven, oriented metrics, and I think all of that is still incredibly important. But today, more than ever, like I would say, brand is so important. It really does kind of build that trust, right? It is very noisy, I would say, in the world. So having people kind of have that awareness about your organization, the products you offer, and then the reputation around that, right? There's also like nothing stronger than like a recommendation, right? Word of mouth, those kinds of things. So when by the time, right, a salesperson maybe has a conversation, right, or you get that lead, they would have already seen you. They would have already heard about you. Maybe they've even read some reviews about you. Maybe they've heard other people talk about you, right? And having, I think, that initial kind of trust and that awareness just makes that conversation go so much smoother, right? Because
Yeah.
they have this idea in their head already about what that might be.
So you mentioned about kind of coming from a demand based background, but you also mentioning that you're more into product led growth. How are you marrying those two areas? What are the kind of benefits or the aspects that you're still taking from demand, but very much landing in product led growth?
I think, demand at its core is very metrics driven, right? And really about like the funnel stages, right? And how you move through the funnel and like what are the things that are going to get you through. So I think very similarly, right? Some of the PLG motion is kind of the same concepts at on a different way, right? So maybe the stages and what you want somebody to do within the product and what those triggers might be are different, but conceptually, right, you are still trying to um, get them to a point where they, have this moment within the product that feels magical, right? That feels like, oh my gosh, this is it. And then from like within the product, within like things that they do within the product, you can do things like trigger-based marketing, like just like we do in like maybe like traditional demand, where if it's like, oh, maybe if they're in this stage, we'll send them this kind of content, within the product, you can identify things, right? Identify different actions that might mean certain things, right? And then that makes some trigger-based kind of campaigns around that, whether it's in product or in email, to help them either get to, let's say, like the value of the product that you want them to see, right, in a more like self-serve motion, or have them kind of get ready for, or lead them to some of those features that make them more like ready, like sales ready, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. So, what advice would you give a CEO or sales leader to create that roadmap? You say the roadmap has changed enormously. So, like we're coming to the end, in the middle of the fourth quarter, moving
Yeah.
into first quarter 2026. What would you say is the one thing that leaders need to make sure they land, to make sure that they have a good revenue growth into 2026, given that things are changing so much?
Yeah. I do think one of the things that I think about again is kind of probably like building for the slope, right? Is actually thinking about where you want to be and like where you go, and you have that goal, right? And you have like the plan around it, but not to over engineer kind of that piece of it, right? Because I think there's still unknown, and people are so if you over engineer something, right, into a certain place, then you're kind of stuck. And so I think that's part of one of the things, is to be a little bit more um, open, and also kind of think about like the different scenarios up and down that can happen, right? And what you might do in some of those places, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it must be quite a nervous position to be in because we're so used to having plans. And now our plans, it's like that funnel, the plan
Yeah.
is open and there's different scenarios we can go on. As you say, building for the slope, not the destination. A plan has a
Yeah.
destination. But yeah, you're still got to have that in mind, but just be
Yeah.
willing to be flex. It's uncomfortable. This is 5 years ago. This is not what we were built to do.
Yeah.
And now you're asking us to do the almost the opposite in driving forward, driving revenue. And we understand why, but it's very uncomfortable. How do you get comfortable with that?
Um, I agree it can be uncomfortable, right? Like, and I think people who have maybe like had these playbooks for a long time and they see that they're not working, right? Or things that they've done in the past that aren't working. There is a level, I think, of discomfort, right? Because something that you said that you felt that was should be working is not. But I also feel like it's one of the most exciting times. And maybe that time, right? Like you said, like for 10 years, like it was very predictable, and um there's so much change. And I think, in the same way, when we think there's also like opportunity, right? There's opportunity in this time that's like unknown. And there's this opportunity of being able to make that slope, right? Or even get somewhere like faster, right? Or than you might have thought it was, right? If you find that thing. And I think that's really important. And I think that's something to remember. Like if you think about like, oh, I'm uncomfortable, like you have to lean in. If you are uncomfortable and you're scared, right? And you're like, this isn't working, that's probably like not a good place to be, right? You have to be, I think, flexible and lean in.
I absolutely love this, and I want to ask you about what personal value or beliefs has shaped your approach. Because what's come through very much here is that openness and curiosity. Have the plan, have the playbook, but really, what got you there is not going to get you there, and be comfortable with that. So, what has created, this your personal values and beliefs?
I feel like myself as a leader, obviously I'm there to set like direction and strategy and do that. But I'm also have always been about like amplifying my team and the work and the people around me as well, right? So it's really about like getting to the outcome, but by also helping the others around you raise their game, right? So I mean, I read this, someone actually recommended this book to me called Multipliers. And I was reading it and I was like, okay, like actually that is something I really, how do you make with like limited resources, like 1 + 1 = 3? And that has kind of been like maybe like a core philosophy for me, like in my life and in my teams, right? And in my organization. So maybe I started from a place too that wasn't, and that's how we get to our goals, is really helping everybody like raise their level, right? And get there. And so, yeah, I think that's one thing that I think has really helped and maybe is helping me during this time as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very much the attributes of a servant leader, isn't it? That multiplying 1 + 1 is really 3 if you're
Yeah.
able to utilize it within your team. So I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Because I do feel like I'm in the AI space now, and I have to say, Janice, like it's crazy, like absolutely crazy. And but I hear it from, I mean, people who are not in the AI space, like my peers, like marketers, like everybody is like stressed. And like you salespeople too, like how many salespeople are actually like sales teams are making their numbers these days,
Mm,
right? But very little. And I don't want to say very little. That's not true. But times are changing,
yeah.
and yeah, I hope that wasn't too mushy, is what I was going to say.
No, well, I think because almost it came back to like a core tenant
Yeah,
in the it's the world we live in.
yeah,
What is not, what's got you there isn't going to
yeah,
get you there. And I think that was really strong. And I think people are quite fearful of
yeah,
that, but actually just saying, this is what it is.
yeah,
This is what you have to do. You need to hold fast and be
yeah,
aware that you're going to have to adapt. And I like the last thing that you said is in that adaptation is where the opportunities are. There's
yeah,
nothing to say that you're not going to get there quicker
yeah.
by being
Well,
open and adaptable. Yeah.
Well, I think we have our plan. We're like, okay, this is what we're planning for. And you're like, oh, wait, that didn't work. All right, plan B, right? You got to just like move quickly.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was just going to say about asking good questions, and we had moved on, is that also with things like ChatGPT, like answers are everywhere. Anyone can give you an answer now, but you have to ask the right questions to be able to get the right answer. ChatGPT can answer anything, but but if like with more context, you get a better answer. But you have to be the one to like keep going and asking those questions to get like the better answer, if that makes
And
sense.
the other thought I had when you were talking was that from a humanistic point of view, ChatGTP and all of the, Copilot can give you the answers. And you may even be
Yeah,
able to ask great questions, right? But the individual in front of you is different. So
yeah,
you've got to ask a different question based upon who's in front of you. And, none of those tools can do that. It's the
yeah.
human element that can do that.
Absolutely, right? Salespeople every day, right?
Yeah,
Talking on the front lines. That
yeah.
is so true. I didn't even think, I'm a marketer, right? So I kind of thought about it at a high level, but the salespeople too just have to be able to like have those conversations, the context, and be able to like, yeah, ask those questions.
Love it. Love it. Excellent. So, Michelle, how can listeners get hold of you?
Um, well, I guess the best way to do it would be on LinkedIn. So yeah, Michelle Jean Kim on LinkedIn would be the best way.
Excellent. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. There's been a theme, a really strong theme that has come through in this discussion. So thank you so much for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast and sharing your vast experience with us, Michelle Kim.
Thank you so much, Janice, for having me.
If you enjoy this episode of Scale Your Sales podcast, explore other episodes of insightful guest conversations or watch the caption show on YouTube. Remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode filled with strategies to help you scale your sales. I love to hear your thoughts. So please share your views and leave a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more revenue generators just like you. So until next time, keep scaling your sales.